Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloud Forest Vibes. So today I have a really cool video for you guys. A couple weeks ago, Michael over at Honeybees and Orchids hit me up and he asked me if I'd like to be a part of a hashtag care collab video for Aerangis mystacidii. Naturally I said yes. I'm super excited about this. It's going to be me, Michael from Honeybees and Orchids, Nina over at Ninja's Orchids, and Ed over at Ed's Orchids. We're all doing a video on this plant in our different environments just to try to help you guys and show you guys how we grow this plant, which will hopefully help you guys grow this plant as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get in here. We'll take a look at my Aerangis mystacidii and we'll have a little chat about when I got it, how I grow it, and hopefully I can give you guys some tips and tricks and teach you guys how to grow this thing as well. So I'm going to get this camera off the tripod and we will go take a look at Mr. Aerangis. Alrighty, so this is my Aerangis mystacidii. I got this thing on January 9th of 2020 from New World Orchids. This thing came to me potted in a tiny little mesh pot with pure sphagnum moss, and it stayed like that for a little bit until I got it mounted on this piece of cork with just a little bit of zombie moss. I'll throw a picture up of it so you can get a feel for it. It has grown quite a bit. If you look back at this part, you see a smaller leaf, and down here again, those are some of the original leaves, and these two and this new one here are what I have put on since I've gotten it a year ago. Before I get into my culture and everything for this plant, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Aerangis mystacidii itself. Aerangis mystacidii is a miniature epiphytic plant. They come from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, Zambia, in that area in Africa. They tend to grow in riverine forests and gorges, along streams, on small twigs and branches that overhang water, as well as evergreen forests and woodlands that get a high percentage of rainfall through the year. When they bloom on a 12-inch pendulous inflorescence that carries 3 to 25 nocturnally fragrant flowers. They bloom in the summer and the fall, and they're best grown mounted on cork. They grow cool to warm, they like moderate shade, high humidity, and they do like a cooler, drier rest in the winter. This is what orchidspecies.com has to say about it. I'll take this opportunity as well to throw up a picture of what the bloom looks like, because it really is gorgeous and I have not managed to bloom mine yet, so this is what they look like. Now, getting back to my culture for it, I'm going to start by saying that how I'm growing this plant right now is not necessarily how I want to end up growing this plant. What I mean by that is, like I said, this thing came to me potted in pure sphagnum moss. It didn't have the best root system, so I mounted it with just a little bit of sphagnum moss because that's what it was used to. It's used to growing super moist from where I got it, and it does not want to grow that moist all the time. These plants do love moisture, don't get me wrong, but if you look at pictures of how this grows in the wild, I'll throw one up right now for an example, you'll see that this plant is almost rarely, if ever, found growing in moss. This plant is almost always found clung to bare branches, just like a Tolumnia or a twig epiphyte, because that is how it likes to grow. Having that said, the roots do not want to stay wet for any sort of extended period of time. The roots that it has grown, one of them actually grew aerial because I think it doesn't like the moss. The other one grew down over the moss and then attached firmly to this mount, which tells me even more that this plant really does not like the moss. So I've gradually been picking little bits of this moss off as I go, trying to get it to where it's going to be eventually just bare rooted on this bark. It's going to up the workload for me. I'm going to have to spray this plant probably twice a day or so in the summertime, but it's going to make it a lot easier for the dry winter rest and to keep this plant's roots happy long term on this mount, which is what's important. Having that said, though it's going to grow bare rooted on here, they do appreciate lots of moisture. They come from areas that get lots of rainfall, or they cling again to branches that overhang rivers, overhang streams in the wild, so they have lots and lots of humidity around their roots, and they do get very frequent rain showers that will wash nutrients and water over their roots. They should always be allowed to dry or get very close to drying between waterings. And that is why, again, I am slowly getting rid of the moss. If I could get some live moss to grow on here, I would be ecstatic, but the chances of that are pretty slim, considering that it does like to dry out pretty good in the wintertime. The differences that I'm going to change this year in my cultivation for it versus how I grew it last year is I'm going to grow it a bit brighter. Last year I grew it really shady. I grew it moist and I grew it shady. I was trying to help it acclimatize to its new mount from being in a pot of sphagnum moss. It grew on the bottom shelf behind other plants, and it got bright indirect light and some LED light. But this year I'm switching it up. It's going to get bright indirect sun from the morning side over that way, and then switching around towards the late morning into the afternoon, it's just going to get bright LED light from above. I've moved it up to a higher shelf. I'm hoping that it helps take off, and gradually as it goes, I'm going to be plucking moss off of this plant. If I zoom out here a little bit, you'll see the black thing right here is actually my humidifier. So when my humidifier kicks on, the moist air is going to lift up and suck right across the face of this thing into this cooling fan here that I have blowing at my Tolumnias. So all my really humid loving plants get this awesome breeze that circulates with these computer fans from this humidifier right here, and I think that's really important to the success of twig epiphytes and other plants that grow like this plant right here, and Tolumnias and other Aerangis species like that. So temperature wise, I grow this plant intermediate. In the summertime it gets 67 degrees or so in the evenings. I can't get it too cool in here, and up to about 82, sometimes 83 during the day. In the wintertime, right now, it's 58 degrees at night. It gets up to about 74, 75 sometimes during the day. And the humidity in here stays high year-round. That's 80 to 86% year-round in here. I do not go below that. I do have tons and tons of airflow. I've got 8 computer fans. They're 6 inches each, spread throughout, so I get a circulation effect from those. And I have a nice big circulating oscillating fan at the bottom that points directly up at the roof that pulls cool air from the bottom up, and it has a really nice circulating effect. So there is tons and tons of airflow, which is why I don't have as many problems with the high humidity, especially in the wintertime. And the resting plants honestly really seem to like it. They do appreciate humidity, they just don't like to be watered. So speaking of rest, this is again a plant that does need a drier winter. It's not a resting type plant like you would think of a dendrobium or something like that. However, it does grow significantly drier, where I would water this every day or every other day in the summertime to make sure it was getting moist dry. This time of year I water it maybe once every 4 days, and it's just a quick spritz. Usually it's just clean filtered water, or sometimes I give it some CalMag and some kelp in the wintertime, but that's it. Low doses, probably 40 to 60 parts per million. And since it's already kicked back into growth, I am starting to feed it a little bit, but it's really slow right now, guys. It would prefer to be a little bit warmer. So I'm only giving it like 90 parts per million. It's getting fed just like a Masdevallia or Pleurophthalid right now, once every 3 weeks. As the temperatures start to rise, so will the feed levels, so will the frequency of watering, so will everything else. When the spring hits, I'm going to bump up probably to about 120 parts per million of MSU. I'll start mixing in CalMag and kelp, and as it starts to really rage into growth, I'll probably put some cal nitrate in there. Periodically, here and there, I always wet my roots down with water before I feed this, especially once I'm starting to get up in the 120s. Towards summertime, if this is really growing and doing well, I might even take it up to about 180 parts per million. And then you definitely want to make sure that you're wetting down these roots before you feed the plant, because this is super susceptible to getting root burn. All Aerangis and Angraecums are very susceptible to that. So definitely make sure you're wetting down those roots, guys, before you feed. So that's about it. Like I said, a brief synopsis of my care tips. Grow it with high humidity if you can, as high as you can get it. Make sure it has a moist dry cycle for its roots. If you have it potted in something, make sure it has plenty of air around its roots. I know some people like to grow these potted. I would use a coarse media. I would make sure that it drains really well. I would treat it more like a cattleya or something like that in culture as far as in a pot. You really want this thing to dry out between waterings. Bright shade, regular waterings in the summer, a drier winter rest, and intermediate to warm temperatures throughout the year will make this a relatively happy plant. So this is mine. We'll check back in on it later. You'll see my new growth there. It's got some roots coming. This one's starting to get its tip back. I think it's going to start growing again here soon. So this is really starting to get ready for the new season. My temperatures are starting to rise slowly but surely. The daytime temperatures are creeping up. I came in here the other day and it was 75 degrees. So we haven't seen that in over a month. Yeah, so exciting times. Again, this is my care collab video. Michael, thank you so much for inviting me to this. Again, guys, if you haven't checked out Michael over at Honeybees and Orchids, Nina over at Ninja Orchids, or Ed over at Ed's Orchids, please go do that. I've got the link to their channel down below in my description. Please go check them out, support them. They are awesome, all of them. They've got a lot of great videos. They give a lot of great information on how to grow, and I really do think you'll enjoy it. If you enjoy my channel, you'll definitely enjoy theirs. So anyhow, thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this care collab video. Let me know if you guys like this. I love doing stuff like this. I would love to do more stuff like this in the future. I love to help you guys grow these plants, and I really, really do enjoy making videos like this. So thanks again, guys, for letting me join in on this, Michael and Nina and Ed. I really appreciate it. And until next time, all you guys, thanks for watching. Happy growing, and please continue to stay safe.